Welcome back, Doug Badger Radio on AM 950. We end our radio program with a little segment we call Right On, where we give out the James Earl Jones Right On. When we think that there's something in the world that's the way it's supposed to be. See, in that first hour, we're reminded that there are frustrations that demand hope, that cause you to cry out something should be different. And then we're reminded that there are places. There are places where in Celtic spirituality, they say that there's a thin space where that which should be shines through. I happen to think that's more common than just the thin spaces.
Yeah.
I think most of the world is the way that it's supposed to be, and occasionally you get some blockage.
Kind of like what you're feeling right now.
Keeps you from seeing what you're supposed to see. So we like to point out these stories, these happenings, these what we would like to call unnewsworthy stories. See, here's why. Because news by its very definition, a news article, a news story, something that rises to the level, is that happening that's so peculiar that it's worth talking about.
Yeah.
It's unusual. It's the way we've organized our news. Now, a lot of news, television news, nightly news programs, they like to have these little human interest stories. They like to have these little heartwarming segments at the end, or a little outdoorsy profile.
Sure.
But they're recognizing that people need a break from all the news, and people will often say, why is it always bad news that we hear about? Well, it's because the bad is newsworthy. We should point it out, and we should do something about it. So when we find the unworthy news stories, because things are the way they're supposed to be, we like to say, right on. Because when you see the good, when you see someone performing in their world in the way that makes it the world the way they want it to be, it inspires, it draws, it brings you into something. And so as we like to say, from the phrase sung to us by the house band, may your faith bring us faith, may your hope bring us hope, may your faith bring us faith, may your love bring us love. So we find these stories, and this one goes out to a church. Every once in a while, we do a story about a church. They're not all bad. No, like most of them aren't bad. Churches do good things.
Sure.
Churches are part of the right-ons in this world. Synagogues are part of the right-ons in this world. Mosques are part of the right-ons in this world. And don't you give me that look.
I was giving you a look about the churches.
Oh, you were still stuck on the churches one? You weren't even over there yet? That
No.
mosques do good things? All right, because they do. All right, they do good things as well. Well, here's a story that was actually listed in the newspaper, but it doesn't end up in the news section. It ends up in the lifestyle section. When someone does something good, it's kind of like, oh, that's just sort of lifestyle.
Yeah.
You put it over there. Well, there's a story about a woman named Angie. She was married. She had a couple of kids, and she had a big house in what we refer to in demographic terms. We, as me and all the other sociologists, we refer to this in demographic terms as the exurbs.
Oh, yeah.
Not the urban center, not the suburban center, but something outside that a little further, these exurbs, and they're becoming whole cities unto themselves. It's a big demographic movement in the United States in the last 20 years. So you have these communities that might be 20 or 25 miles from an urban center, but they're becoming new suburbs, and really often quite wealthy places.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to accomplish a certain economic level, and everybody out there has met that minimum, right, to live there. There tends not to be public housing. There tends not to be, places like where I grew up where lots of people can live in a building together with each other. You tend not to have those.
No riffraff.
No riffraff in those places. And so what often happens in those spots is that you have wealthy people. Yeah. And then they have to think about, well, where are people less fortunate than us? Where do they live? And then it becomes this strange cross-cultural experience to have to go help them. So many people who live in these exurbs don't have their experience of engaging with folks who've turned up homeless. Because homeless people, they go to the urban centers where there's lots of traffic. Yeah. So that they can read the sign, right? This is the mentality.
Sure.
This is where those people live. Well, what's happening because of the chicanery of the bankers, there's many people who are in these exurbs who turn up homeless. Yeah. In this case, a gal named Angie, she got divorced, then lost her job, couldn't make payments on her home, turns up homeless with a couple of kids. So what does she do? So she goes to Washington County, which is one of the big counties here in Minnesota, and she asked them for help, and they said, well, we can't help you anymore because you're going to lose your house and you don't live in Washington County. Yeah. How about that? Yeah. Because we don't have housing shelters, so you don't live in Washington County. So I
can't help you out. Sorry
about that. Yeah. So then she went to churches, went around to churches and asked, and you know what they told her?
What?
Well, you're not a member.
Ugh.
Can't help you. We don't have enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. I pastor a church. It's hard. People come knocking on the door, and they say, hey, can you help? And you're like, we don't have any. I mean, no, it's hard. So she gets that experience. So then she starts calling through the phone book. And so she calls St. Andrew's Lutheran Church in Montemedi. It's a wealthy church.
Yeah.
And she called and she said, I honestly expected that I was going to be turned away, but I got the opposite. Instead, St. Andrew's welcomed her with open arms and called more than, when she called in less than a week, they got her engaged in a whole set of help.
Wow.
Because they decided that they should put together a program that could help homeless people in their area. They proactively organized because they read the tea leaves and said, people are going to be losing their homes. We should probably get ready.
Yeah.
How about that? The good people of St. Andrew's Lutheran Church in Montemedi, a wealthy community with fancy cars in the parking lot, said, hey, we don't all live here for ourselves. We're not about this. We work with families on a case-by-case basis. We don't work on them in a clump. We let each and every person find out what resources do they need to get reestablished, and we'll fill in the gaps.
Wow.
How about that?
Yeah.
I mean, and look, a lot of urban churches do that.
Sure.
I get that because you can see the homeless people. But in the exurbs, in the suburbs, a lot of that gets hidden because you don't know what's happening in that house. You don't know that that person had to move out and go live with a relative.
Yeah.
You don't know that she doesn't tell anybody in the school system because she wants her kids to stay in the same school. So this church says what we're here to do is to work very closely with the school districts so that when it comes up that a child is mentioning that maybe they're going to have to move, they can get engaged with school supplies, backpacks, coats, clothes, food kits, bedding essentials, and weekly meals, and also put people into job groups.
Wow.
And this is happening not in your urban centers where it's been going on for a long time and people have figured that out, but it's happening in places that you wouldn't expect it. And so to the church that said, let's reorganize ourselves, because there might be this problem coming here that we don't see, so we have to go find the way to be helpful.
Yeah.
Right on. To anybody who says proactively, I think there's more trouble than I can see, and does something about it, you get the right on. And when you see that happen, there's always the big ones. There's always the mountaintops. We all know the big organizations that do the big good things, and good for them, because without them, we'd all be screwed, right? But then there's these people who look around and say, but I think there's a little trouble brewing that I don't know anything about, and let's organize for it. So if you're in one of those places, if you're doing those things, if you're at St. Andrew's Lutheran Church of Montemedi, right on from Doug Pagitt Radio. And may your strength bring us strength. May your faith bring us faith. May your hope bring us hope. And may your love bring us love from Doug Pagitt Radio. And when you're creating this reality in your own world, know that there's people that are looking around. They see it and they're inspired. So live, love, hope, faith out loud.
Yes.
Well, that's another radio station's thing, isn't it?
Not anymore.
Live out loud. Doug Pagitt Radio from AM 950, still the progressive voice of Minnesota, and DougPagittRadio.com. Thanks for all the good things you do, folks. Thanks for listening to the program. Tony Jones will be back next week, chatting with you then. Happy April. Talk to you in a couple weeks.